It's time to get nerdy, y'all.
A little bit of gaming history for you.
Something relevant in gaming and discuss our opinions on it.
Should we kick it out of here, or should we kick-start it?
This is the part where you, the listeners, try to stump the hosts.
I'm not a lawyer. I just play one on a podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Wednesday, April 3rd, 2024, and y'all know what that means. It's time to get nerdy, y'all. Welcome to episode number 302 of Two Nerds in a Pod, the nerdiest video game podcast in the galaxy. I am Lam, also known as Mr. Nice Guy, and I'm joined by my comrade in gaming commentary, the Miggity Mac, also known as Maction. Mac, how are you, sir?
I'm doing all right, Mr. Nice Guy. It's been a whirlwind of a past week or so, and been a couple of weeks since we've got together. I'm living the bachelor life this week, man.
Oh, tell me more.
Well, I dropped my spouse off at the airport. They're headed to the path of the eclipse that's going on at the beginning of next week or end of this week. You know, whichever you draw your dividing line. They're doing a thing with the NASA Goddard people.
Wow.
Sad to see them go, but thrilled to know that they're going to be bringing joy and excitement around this most excellent of events. Dude.
You don't get an eclipse every day.
It's true.
That's a cool event.
Yeah.
Now, they're going to be watching the eclipse.
Mm-hmm.
Any coverage, like any commentary, like is there a Twitch channel we can tune into for live commentary of like, it's getting darker. I'm not mocking this because it is very cool. My real question is like, is there any like photos or video or anything we can later check out? Or is this strictly a fun trip for them?
I'm sure there will be some, but I don't know as they'll be doing anything specifically or if NASA's going to be putting up things. But if you see any coverage from NASA Goddard and their stuff that they're doing in Arkansas,
nice.
You might just see a nerd next door.
That is very, very cool.
That's one thing. That's a big thing. But I also had a really fun thing happen today, and it is more directly in line with our show here about video games, and that is a conversation I had at work. A lovely volunteer over at the place where I work. I believe that she's in her 60s. And we talked a lot about video games. Oblivion is her favorite video game of all time.
Nice.
But we talked about Mario. You know, her dogs are named Mario and Luigi.
Wow.
And that's how we got onto the subject. She talked all about Zork and how fun that was to play on a Commodore 64 back in the day.
Wow.
She's like,
Okay.
my family is a gaming family, and I was playing until my thumbs gave out. And she's just like, and now I play on that iPad right there because you cannot stop gaming. Gaming is a lifelong dedication. And I was just like, same girl, same. And
Nice.
just absolutely loved it. She's a lovely person, and I was beyond thrilled. I was like heading out the door when we found this connection, and I was just like, do I stay or do I go now? And so I stayed for a bit.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Can't stop, won't stop when it comes to the gaming.
Can't stop, shan't stop.
Apologies for the P. Diddy reference. Well, hey, Mac, I had a fantastic week last week.
Yeah.
Took the week off of work, took the week off of the pod, which I would have done the pod had I had internet and all my equipment. But my wife and kids and I went down to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and had a very, very good time. And did a little bit of retro game shopping. Hit up several cool stores in South Carolina. And I actually don't have the games with me that I purchased, but I did pick up a copy of Castlevania Adventure, actually here when I got back to Illinois at a new store called Milwaukee Game Together, I believe is what it's called.
Okay.
And shout out to the owner. He was very, very cool. Getting ready for some Midwest Gaming Classic people to be coming through, and still took some time to talk to me. And then hit up a couple stores, Player's Choice in South Carolina, and picked up a copy of Nemesis for the Game Boy, a copy of Contra for the Game Boy, and one other that I can't remember, but managed to find some reasonably priced deals, so had a good time, and then took the wife and kids to a pirate show, spent time on the beach, did all the stuff that you do in South Carolina that's warmer than Wisconsin, and we had a really good time, Mac.
That sounds fantastic.
It was very relaxing. Oh, and by the way, I gotta mention, this weekend, me and a friend of the show, Tiankum, are going to the Midwest Gaming Classic.
Heck yes.
On Saturday. And so we're going to do that and shop and do some retro stuff and have fun. So
I look forward to hearing about it all.
Yeah. But Mac, on that note, I say we do what we do best and we hop right up in that gaming news, my friend. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. Mr. Nice Guy, what is new in video gaming?
So much. And this story I found right before the show, and I'm excited to share with you. Once again, episode 302 is where we're at. Thanks for being here live and or after the fact. We appreciate each and every one of your sets of ears that listens to us every week. Mac, this is on GameInformer.com. And here's the title by Matt Miller, announcing the new Game Informer magazine subscription. Here's what he writes. We love gaming magazines, and we're hoping if you're here, you do too. But ours can only survive with support from you. For $19.91 the year of the Game Informer's founding, our new standalone magazine subscription program sends a full year of 10 issues to your doorstep, filled with exclusive cover stories, in-depth interviews with game creators, long-form features and retrospectives, previews of what's coming next in the gaming hobby, reviews of most compelling games, and more. In recent months, it's sometimes been difficult to know how to get your Game Informer in your mailbox, and for that, we apologize. Requests for an easy, no-frills way to get a print magazine subscription are by far the number one request we hear from you, and that's what we're delivering today. Mac, I want to get your perspective. We grew up in the age of Nintendo Power, of PC Gamer Magazine, which still may be going on, of all types of gaming magazines. I never had access to any of those as a kid. My parents weren't ordering me Nintendo Power. My parents are awesome, love them to death. That wasn't a thing that they were gonna put money down for, was a magazine about gaming. As an adult with access to the internet, with access to information like that at the tip of your fingertips, does the idea of a gaming magazine appeal to you? And if so, why? If no, why not?
Definitely yes, Mr. Nice Guy, because I think insofar as I am a huge tech guy, and I'm a big proponent of, well, most technological advances, there are some things that we just really haven't nailed down yet. And a reading experience that is better than a print magazine or print newspaper is one of those things that I feel like we've just still not been able to get. Now, there are some good things out there and things that replicate it, but a lot of times the best experience we have is really trying to replicate the print on paper situation. Things like Remarkable or like the Kindles and things like that. There are just a lot of advantages to it. And I also think that that it is a little bit more fixed, if you will. Sometimes these sites go down, and sometimes you'll be looking, especially in my case, I find myself often looking on Wikipedia for bits and bobs of information. I follow the links to a news article that is no longer there, or is inaccessible to me, at least. And I think it's something that I'm interested in. I think it's the idea is definitely worth it. I'm actually planning on, putting down cash for this right after we finish this record. I will, for $20, take a chance on, maybe it's not the best reporting, but I'll take a chance on that for $20 for the year. Heck yeah.
Well, here's what I can tell you. I had the exact same thought, which was, yes, I want to get this magazine again. Mm-hmm. And previously it was tied to a GameStop subscription where you had to go into GameStop, get the Power Up Rewards program. I think it was $15 at one point, and then it went up to $25. And then for a while, it was like you get the Power Up Rewards with GameStop, but you only get the digital version of the magazine, if I remember correctly. And if I'm going to get a magazine, don't give me a digital magazine. Give me a physical one. Mm-hmm. I think a big part of why this is going to become more relevant again, this gaming magazine, is the idea of subscription services. For Christmas this past year, my brother got my kids one of those STEM boxes that sends you like engineering toys that you can build. Mm-hmm. And so once a month, they get something that stimulates their brain, and it's a subscription service. And it's exciting to watch them be excited and say, has it come yet? Has it come yet? Has it come yet? To get it and then to open it. And it's just like it's like Christmas once a month, 12 times a year. And so I too am excited for this. Now, Mac, I got to flex for a minute because, you know, and this was not planned. I just looked over here, and on my desk I keep a stack of my old Game Informer magazines from back in the day. And I just picked two out of the pile. The first one I'm going to hold up for our viewers is Evolve. Now, I don't know how many of you remember Evolve. It was a game that was made by the Left 4 Dead developers after they left. It never did as well as I wanted it to, but I remember I bought the game day one, and I had a lot of fun with it. So it's cool that I have this magazine that commemorates that. And then also, Mac, a game that we all know. This one is the Destiny cover from when the original Destiny came out, and it has 14 pages of exclusive details. Now, I don't know if we'll have exclusive details in this new subscription service, but regardless, I'm excited, and I'm going to buy it as well. It's less than $2 a magazine. So I hope that our community is as excited as we are, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. Tweet at us, email us, let us know. Mac, any other comments on this before we move on?
Dude, you always bring me the nicest things. Thank you.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. I'm legitimately excited for this. Cool. Well, let's move on to GameSpot.com. This article is from Haley Williams, and here is what Haley writes. Sony has revealed that one of its PlayStation Plus Premium/Extra games for April is also a Day 1 release, Tales of Kenzera, Zao. The debut game from actor Abubakar Salim Studio, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, sir, Surgent Studios, will come to the PlayStation Plus Premium Extra library when it releases on April 23rd. Tales of Kenzera Zao is a 2.5D Metroidvania action-adventure inspired by Bantu Tales, which follows the story of protagonist Zao as he contends with grief following the death of a loved one. Bottom line, Mac, I think it's interesting that PlayStation is now starting to have games releasing Day 1 as part of their subscription service. The thing that we talk about a lot on the pod is physical versus digital. How long until we no longer have access to physical media? And everything is digital. But my question for you, Mac, is how long until games are strictly being released as part of a subscription service? Do you think that's something that's going to happen in the near future? Xbox is doing it. PlayStation is dabbling in it. What do you think?
Well, I think the first one to do it was probably when we briefly had the Google Stadia, right?
Yeah.
They had themselves a cloud streaming subscription style service, and there were exclusives that were only available on there. And I think some of those exclusives never made ports to other systems. So I think there is some number, and I couldn't tell you what number, that, you know, are no longer available anymore, which is a shame. And, you know, but yeah. So and you said that that PlayStation is doing it. Is this the first one that PlayStation is doing this way?
That's a really good question, and I don't know. So I don't want to give incorrect information, but I do know that this is not a huge AAA game. It's more of an indie style game. Xbox does a lot of Day 1 releases, but it's in part because they own the studios that are making the games.
Yeah.
Because they've bought up a bunch of stuff. This one, I think, is just a deal between Sony and the creator.
Well, I hope that it winds up, you know, working out well for the developer, for the people who, you know, actually put in the work to make the game. I think it's fair to say that in most situations, unless they're getting an incredibly good deal, that they would probably, especially if it's a good game, they'd probably be well served by releasing on multiple platforms. But, you know, that might not always be the option for a game developer. It's expensive to release on platforms, you know?
To be clear, it is releasing on multiple platforms.
Okay.
It just so happens that it's going to be a day one PlayStation Plus title. So it's going to be part of that subscription service, but it does say here it's releasing April 23rd for PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, and PC.
Okay, sorry, you were probably very clear about that, and I didn't understand it. So this is
I wasn't. It's okay.
No, you were. I probably didn't listen. They were timed exclusives, is what it sounds like, right?
No. So once again, it's releasing on all of them.
Yeah.
But it will be quote unquote free, right? Part of the subscription service on PlayStation.
You'll have to pay for it on other platforms. It'll be included with your subscription service. Oh God, Lom,
you're tired.
I must be tired, man. That is as clear as this water I'm drinking.
Drink some water, man. No worries. And it'll be interesting to see what they do with this. I like the idea that it's available on PlayStation. We don't get a lot of stuff on PlayStation that's included in our subscription, other than the games that they're giving out. But those are usually typically older stuff. Yeah. So this is cool to see. Well, Mac, I want to get your perspective on one more story before we continue. And I'm still sitting here geeking out about this Game Informer magazine. I'm so hyped for that. So you and I think it'd be safe to say we're both fans of handheld gaming.
Yeah.
But I really only buy handheld gaming devices that are going to be a good fit for me, with the exception of the PlayStation Portal, which I regret buying because it just doesn't work for me. But this is about an Xbox handheld. This is on Polygon.com by Chris Plant. Here is what Chris writes. Phil Spencer has tried all of the new PC gaming handhelds, the Asus ROG Ally, the Lenovo Legion Go, and the Steam Deck. He's impressed, but he can't shake one question. How would he make them more Xbox? Quote, I want my Lenovo Legion Go to feel like an Xbox, Spencer told Polygon in an interview during the annual Game Developers Conference. I brought the Legion Go with me to GDC. I'm on the airplane and I have this list of everything that makes it not feel like an Xbox. Forget about the brand. More like, are all of my games there? Do all of my games show up with the save files that I want? I'll tell you one game that doesn't right now, and it's driving me crazy, is Fallout 76. It doesn't have cross-save. I want to be able to boot into the Xbox app in a full screen, but in a compact mode, and all of my social experience is there. Like, I want to feel like the dash of my Xbox when I turn on the television, except I want it on those devices. So, Mac, here's my question for you. Because one of the major criticisms of Xbox has been the lack of exclusives.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be willing to overlook the lack of exclusives on a console if they put out a handheld that simply gave you access to their ecosystem? Things like your friends list, things like your saves, things like the games that they make available on Game Pass. Would that make it more appealing, or would you still say there's nothing here that I can't do on my other devices? I don't want that.
You know, I think it's a great question, Nice Guy, and I think it comes down to how embedded someone is in said ecosystem as to whether or not that calculus plays out. You know, I think the phrase that we keep throwing back and forth is that, you know, your software is going to sell your hardware, and you need to have something to really push that. And as long as you're deeply embedded enough in the ecosystem that your friends list, your saves in that specific thing, and your games as part of that ecosystem's Game Pass are strong enough, then an experience that has good integration, I think that could be a good selling point for something. And especially if it's an option and you also have the ability to do other things. Now, obviously, one great thing that would be going for an Xbox handheld would be not only that direct access, but of course anything that would work that way would probably be a reasonably powerful enough to run most PC games, since that's really kind of what it's doing anyway. So we would find a lot of overlap between, you know, the Steam Deck, and I imagine it wouldn't be too long before Steam was running on that, either legitimately as intended or by people, you know, ahoy matey, and doing a little bit of tinkering.
Doing a little bit of tinkering. Ahoy matey, I like it. You know what's interesting about this is I was never like super embedded in the Steam ecosystem until I got the Steam Deck. Now, granted, I have a gaming PC, and I had a Steam account, and I played it, and I even had the Valve Index, so I had a Steam account. But getting access to that device made me so much more involved in the Steam ecosystem, paying attention to Steam sales. Just wanting to know what's going on the platform, trying to get more friends on my friends list so that I can play with people on the go. And I think that an Xbox handheld would have the same effect. There may be gamers who say, I don't want to sit in front of my TV and play an Xbox. I don't have a Steam Deck, but I have always really wanted to get into Halo or Gears of War or even just the Call of Duties that are available on multi-platform. Another thing, too, is the potential for an Xbox handheld to not have to worry about the anti-cheat and the kernel level management that comes with a handheld PC. Because as of right now, you cannot play Destiny 2 on your Steam Deck. They will ban you if you do it, unless you're streaming it somehow, right? Like streaming it via Chiaki. So I do think that the Xbox handheld has a lot of potential, and I don't think that they would need to come out with exclusives to make it something that people buy. It could even introduce some new people to the ecosystem. Last thing I'll say was at an Easter egg hunt with the kids this weekend, and I met a couple people from my neighborhood. We were having a good time. One of the people who was visiting turned out to be a gamer, and he was like, oh yeah, I'm a huge gamer. We were talking about all our systems, and he was like, I also have this that I carry with me. And he reached into his pocket and he pulled out the Playdate, which I have never seen one of those in person before. But it just goes to show that people who are really into game... Oh, you have one, Mac?
No, my brother-in-law has one, so I have played it. And anyway, it's a fun little thing.
And I didn't try it because we were kind of in a hurry and I didn't know him well enough. But it's interesting to me. I don't think he bought it for the exclusives. I think he bought it just for the fun experience of a handheld. Because the exclusives aren't known until they get downloaded wirelessly on that thing. So point being, handhelds are taking over. An Xbox handheld, probably not for me, but only could help Xbox.
I agree 100%.
And that's been our news for the week.
All right, well, now that we've seen what's going on around us, let's take a little look into the past with some video game history. Mr. Nice Guy, this last week, in years before, we have had some fantastic titles. And I wonder if, not just for me, not just for you, but also for our viewers, if these things are the type of impactful things that, at least, maybe they were in history. I'll start with the first one and work our way back. The most recent, Superhot, game released for the PC in 2014. It's a first-person shooter, but with this fun twist that time only moved in it while you were moving in it. So that meant that you could line up your shots, take lots of time to plan a specific movement, and then move in order to kind of bullet dodge, but also have your attacks still land. It also meant that you had to be very cautious about the ways that you got from point A to point B, and involved a whole sort of thing. There might be a situation where you have to optimize your path so as to make sure that you used up the least amount of time getting to the exit. Some levels you couldn't dawdle on, but it was this real fun twist on it. I remember playing it not too long after it launched, and particularly enjoying the gimmick. Did you ever play Superhot, Mr. Nice Guy?
I did. They have it in VR as well.
Oh, and do they? I imagine that would be most intriguing. Have you played it in VR?
I have. I do not own it in VR, but I have played it in VR. And I would say it's one of those games where you're not going to play it for hours and hours and hours and hours. Mm-hmm. Not a ton of replayability, but it is a really, really good game and utilizes virtual reality really well.
Nice. I have been curious about this. In its VR incarnation, do you remember if time moved when you moved walking, or was it even when you were moving your body around?
It has been a while. I am 90% sure that it's also when you're moving your body around.
Oh, a added new and interesting component.
Fact checked me, though, audience. I could be wrong about that.
So Superhot 2014, if you don't know, now you know. We will step now a few more years back into the past. Another release for the PC, 2002, Dungeon Siege. So this game, very much, you would be forgiven for thinking that this was kind of a Diablo clone.
Right.
Not exactly much of a story, not too frightfully much going for it, but a very solid game, solid art direction, solid coding for it. The great part of Dungeon Siege, perhaps its greatest component, was that basically you could have a team of 8 people in this Diablo style thing, and these would be NPCs inside of the game that you would draft into your team. Some of them joined you because you rescued them, others because you paid for them, and you would go out as a squad fighting for good. And it was fantastic. Great, amazing choices from the devs who really had an eye for what worked in Diablo, what would be great if we could implement, including this one thing that was fantastic. You could just press a button and all your team would go pick up every lootable thing in the nearby area. So you slay all the monsters, there's cash, there's items everywhere, you just hit the button, bam, they go grab it, donezo, and on to the next thing when you sell it off at the next town. But something that's very frustrating or difficult, picking up all the loot, click on this pile of gold and that pile of gold and everything. Nope, just done, one button click. But yeah, Dungeon Siege, a game that I feel like really took and analyzed what was good about its forebearers and how to bring it, some slightly more modern sensibilities, even if it was just a few additional years of sensibilities, but still great stuff. And usually you can pick it up pretty cheap, well worth sinking a few hours into.
Absolutely.
2 quick ones.
Please.
Yeah. One, 1998, released for the PC, StarCraft. Still popular to this day. Cannot overstate just how much StarCraft did for the RTS genre. And then lastly, BS, standing for Broadcast Satellaview, Legend of Zelda, released in 97. Those of you have probably heard me mention this one before, but I think it's always worth mentioning that The Legend of Zelda, released for the broadcast satellite, early sort of streaming games technology where they purchased satellite time, and your Super Nintendo connected to the Satellaview would download the data from a satellite. You could play it during a specific hour when that data was downloaded and served onto your SNES, allowing you to play a new adventure. It was essentially a DLC for Link to the Past. Link to the Past engine of the first Legend of Zelda game is what BS Legend of Zelda was. The new component of it was delivered in 4 segments, and each one of those overwrote the previous data. And the only reason why this still exists is because some people downloaded one portion of each of the 4 and never downloaded the others and hung on to their cartridges long enough for those to get dumped so that we can play it now, because this game does not exist in any other format save as a ROM dump that was had, and is available if you know where to look. So yeah, preservation for the win. But anyway, that's what I had for video game history today. Early DLCs for you.
Love to hear it. Love to hear it. Well, now it's time for our Indie Game of the Week, a segment where we talk about a game that may need more attention and decide if it deserves your attention. And Mac, this week we have the opportunity to talk about a very, very interesting game that we were fortunate enough to get before release, and we are now getting to it, having had time to play. This week's game is Ultros. Released February 13th, 2024. Here is the description on Steam. Ultros is a psychedelic Metroidvania where you wake up stranded on the sarcophagus, a cosmic uterus holding an ancient demonic being. Trapped in the loop of a black hole, you will have to explore the sarcophagus and meet its inhabitants to understand the part you play. Mac, currently the game is at 201 reviews on Steam. Very positive rating. Price is $24.99 for the base game, and developer is Head Oak and publisher is Kepler Interactive. Shout out to them for sending us this code for review. It does not affect our opinion. Mac, would love to hear your thoughts, and then I will share mine.
So I have put in way more time into this game than I expected.
Okay.
It started being sort of, I guess, run-of-the-mill Metroidvania, except I was a little bit, to be honest, I was a little underwhelmed by the combat. I felt like the combat didn't do a very good job of the game, and it wasn't until a little while in that I realized the combat's not the point, my dudes. And then it sort of made sense. I don't know, nice guy, how much do we want to divulge? There is so much depth here.
Yeah, there is. I guess we don't want to spoil things. But I mean, I guess I can give my thoughts to jump in for a minute. So first and foremost, part of what drew me to this game is that candidly, we are suckers for Metroidvanias. We do try a lot of other types of games, but we both love the Metroidvania type of game. Now, this is one of the more beautiful games that I have played. It says psychedelic in the description.
Oh yeah.
And that's exactly how I would describe it. Like very, very colorful, very vibrant. Everything in terms of the art style is just gorgeous. However, it almost runs the risk in my mind of being a little bit too busy. Because there is so much going on in the background that, in my opinion, your character in the foreground sometimes gets sucked up by all of the stuff that is in the background with the lush and the plant life.
100%, Thom. As a matter of fact, I was feeling very much the same way until I discovered the graphics sliders to tone down the backgrounds, both in vibrancy as well as in busyness. And while I eventually, kept them up at the default thing, like it had, I was like, oh my gosh, my eyes are bleeding. And then I was able to dial it right to just the perfect spot for me. And
what I would say, this is the type of game, if you like Metroidvanias, you're going to enjoy it. Mm-hmm. If you're the type of person who likes Metroidvanias that are really, really based with a lot of lore and story and history, and things to read and things to discover and story, this will be your type of game. If you just want a Metroidvania where you're running around and really solving the puzzles, there is that aspect, but that's not strictly this. And one thing that really sets this game apart, and Mac, I don't know if you were going to talk about this, the fact that you can go back in time and that you kind of lose your abilities, right?
It's I found that more frustrating than enjoyable, but hey, different strokes for different folks. But one of the things that was nice is that there is a limited amount of your power-ups that you can lock down. So like you've got like the two types of power-ups. You've got the abilities that you only get because of a certain gadget that you pick up. And that you can't hang on to. But there are things like better HP, the ability to, I believe wall climbing was one of the things that you unlocked in your memory tree. But also, if you explore diligently, you'll find the limited quantity of items that will allow you to basically pin a memory so that it's available in future cycles.
Correct.
So, and I can confirm that you can get enough to pin everything on the board. So you don't have to make the choice. It'll just be choices earlier on. But yeah, no, It was interesting on the one hand. Sometimes it was nice. Sometimes it was difficult. There were some things that weren't especially well explained. That
Correct.
It took me way longer than I wanted to figure out. Oh, I can break this barrier by growing a plant into it. Or, oh, I can keep this barrier that I would normally have to strike with a sword. As long as I make a plant go across that won't be there next time. So I can get there before I have my sword. And such. There were some things like that took me time to get to, but was ultimately satisfying when I did.
I would say in terms of the caliber of game, like we have games where it's like, this is, not a game for me, but it's really well made. I think that this is a game that's kind of for me because it's a Metroidvania. But there were certain things, like you said, that frustrated me. I already talked about the art style. We talked about going back in time, which frustrated me, but I have to give them credit for that because it gives you a unique twist that you don't get in every other Metroidvania.
And Nice Guy, it didn't feel like something that obviously we didn't like, but it didn't feel like something that was there to wring more playtime out of the game. Not like the Robot Master refights in the Mega Man series that was originally done to wring some extra time. This was a core piece of what the game was, both from a lore perspective and a gameplay perspective. So I definitely had to, mad props for that.
I will say, I have a lot of good to say about this. And I will say I have not put nearly as many hours into this as I want to. The one thing that frustrated me about this game, and I got to give him credit because I don't like having my hand held when I play a game, but I didn't like the fact that you had to kill guys with diversity of combat moves. So rather than just being able to slice up an enemy and then harvest its parts, because that is a big part of this game, harvesting parts and then using them to get upgrades, you had to kill them in a way that you didn't mess up the carcass, which meant you had to use different buttons and different combos and not just slice, or punch. And I felt like that was completely unnecessary. I don't think that added to the game in any way. And for me, that was just a point of frustration. I don't know how you felt about it.
I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you. In something like that, the fact that the combat was not very robust, giving you the options to not mess up the carcass well and do that diversity of attacks was frustrating. But there came a point in time where I started getting all the upgrade stuff that I needed, all the food that I needed, all the stuff from basically the plants that I had grown on previous cycles.
Yeah.
And out of the fruits. So at some point in time, it didn't make a difference to me anymore. And this is a little bit spoilery, but this was a game changer for me, that if you feed stuff to the enemies that are around, they will on the next cycle have dug a soil patch for you to plant new seeds in areas where they weren't before. And that took me embarrassingly long to figure out. I wish I had started doing that sooner. And so just as a present to you people, because it's too late for me, start by trying to feed the birds tuppence a bag, as it were.
Yeah, 100%. Well, Mac, here's what I got to ask you as we put a pin in this. Number one, this game is $24.99 on Steam. So do you think that is an accurate price based on the value? And number two, what rating did you give this game?
On our scale, Mr. Nice Guy, I am giving this one a 5 out of 5. Because I feel like even my particular concerns aside, I feel like this was almost perfect. But not so perfect that I'm going to give it below 5 of 5. I'm just going to say 5 out of 5. And I think it's worth the money. The amount of time that this kept me busy, kept me engaged, kept me wanting and working at solving these puzzles. I did not expect to get this much mashed into a Metroidvania suit. and it absolutely did it for me.
Now, I was not as high on the game. The things that frustrated me really frustrated me. And so I have mixed feelings on this game. And I think this is going to be the largest gap we've ever had in our rating system. You're giving it a 5. I'm giving it a 3.5 out of 5. As someone who has played many Metroidvanias, this to me is not S tier. This is not Hollow Knight. This is not, the best Castlevanias that you're getting. This is a Metroidvania where they tried to do something very, very different. They added some mechanics that we have not seen before, and they succeeded. But some of them were so frustrating to me that I just feel like I can't, in good conscience, give this a 5 out of 5. I recommend the game. 3.5 out of 5 is not a bad game.
Sure.
But it's just some of the mechanics, while executed properly, were unnecessary. And that's why I give it that rating. That has been our Indie Game of the Week.
All right, well, now let's turn to a Kickstarter project that's trying to get off the ground. We call this Kick or Kickstart. I have a link in the chat for you. This should take you to a little thing called The Darkest Files. It is a historical true crime investigation game out of an indie studio in Germany. They had a $10,000 goal. They're currently at about 300% of that, with 14 days left. So basically, if you take 2 scoops of Return of the Obra Dinn, a game that I think is one of the greatest games of all time, and 2 heaping cups of the Ace Attorney series and throw them into a blender, then you get something approximating this. In play style, it plays a lot like Return of the Obra Dinn, focusing on memories, on investigation, and Ace Attorney, you get some actual direct interrogation of, air quotes, witnesses to the crimes. It's in the 1950s. The loom of World War II looms heavily in the background. It is a touch higher price than a lot of Kickstarters that we see at $27, which is 25 euros for the minimum buy-in. But delivery is slated for August of this year, so only 4 months away, and that's pretty quick by Kickstarter standards. Even if we build in the usual Kickstarter daylight time zone estimates, that's still really, really quick. They are planning on releasing on Steam, of course, and also on Switch. For this game, and it has heavy noir vibes in its art direction and style. Now, this isn't the first game that this studio has released. I had their first game, the name of their first game listed around here. Oh yeah, Through the Darkest of Times was their first game, and that was a sort of World War II era strategy game, real-time strategy game. That won some awards for its release back in 2020. So it's not their first game, but is their first Kickstarter, and it looks like they're doing pretty well so far. This entirely is set on, this is heavily emphasized by real life, the sort of true crime genre, which I know is one of the most popular of the podcasting genres, true crime. Right. So I know that there's definitely people out there who this would be their thing, and also I'm sure that the overlap between true crime fans and video games is probably pretty high. But Mr. Nice Guy, what's your take on it?
I think that this is cool, and I'm curious with this genre and with this style of game, is there any level of replayability? That, hey, I've played the game, I've beaten it, I've seen the story, I can go back now and I can make different decisions and see a different ending, or is this going to be linear? And maybe we don't know the answer to that. But in my mind, what makes a game like this appealing, I think of the Telltale Walking Dead games, is the ability to go in and make different decisions with dialogue and have it have an effect on the outcome. Mm-hmm. If that is here, then I think that this is a great idea, despite being too high priced. I don't see how this is worth $27. If that's not here and this is a playthrough at once and you're done, every game like that has its place, but I don't think that this is something I would support.
All right.
One other thing I want to point out real quick, and this is something that I don't like about this, is the stretch goals. Some of these stretch goals are things that they know full well they were going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, first of all, their goal was $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're saying, if we get $10,000, we'll put it on Nintendo Switch. That goes hand in hand. Stop treating us like we're stupid. The second thing is $15,000. They're going to put it on Steam Deck, or they're going to make Steam Deck optimization. I can't believe that they were going to put this game on Steam and not have it be optimized for Steam Deck, giving them the best chance possible to get as many sales as possible. They were going to do that regardless. If you're going to put stretch goals, make them real. That's it.
I will say, to play devil's advocate on stretch goals, it could be that that's something that's like, we can have that on release rather than something we get to eventually. But, I think it's fair. I will say the $25,000 goal was just basically, hey, we're going to add additional things so that you don't meet just inside the office because you're in a law office. But, that seems a little...
Sure.
Anyway, all that being said, you know me, Mr. Nice Guy. I feel like one of the most important things in a Kickstarter when you're asking for the money is, hey, can you bring everything together? And that's done best by a playable demo, and I'm happy to say that even though it's way down on the list in the campaign that there is a demo, there is in fact a demo that you can give a shot on your computer if you're so inclined to try it out. Give this sort of cel-shaded 3D, 2D game a try, and go ahead and prosecute some former Nazis. That's the game.
Interesting. Well, this is tough for me. I just think that there's too many things about the Kickstarter that lead me to believe that I'm not going to like the game, but more importantly, that I don't like some of the decisions they're making from a business perspective. And while I wish them success, I got to kick this one, Mac.
I, too, wish them success. We wish everybody success, of course. I'm going to kickstart this one. This is right up my alley, relevant to my interests, and I look forward to updating you guys upon its release as to how I'm liking it. It'll show up in the What I've Been Playing section for sure.
Well, now it's time to move on to our next segment, Nerd Flex.
Woohoo!
A segment where you, the viewers, try to stump the host. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Now, we're recording on an off day, so we don't have as many questions coming in today as normal. But if you are here live and want to get a question in the chat, please do so. Multiple choice, gaming related. Mac and I will do our best to use nothing but our noggins to answer it. But Mac, to start, we're going to go to the test bank right off the bat. And we have a question based on a fighting game.
Ooh.
It says, in the Mortal Kombat series, what Easter egg might appear in the bottom right corner? In the Mortal Kombat series, what Easter egg might appear in the bottom right corner?
So it's my understanding that the people who popped out of the bottom corners when you did stuff were the pictures of developers on the game,
Really?
Yeah, who came out and did the toasty and such. I think those were I don't think those were devs from the game. So I think that's the Easter egg it might be talking about.
I
didn't think of anything?
No, I did not know that. And it's interesting. I did not play much Mortal Kombat growing up. It hasn't aged well, so I've never really played a ton of it. So I am going to go with you on this. I was going to say something related to the fatalities, but let's go with the devs. I think you're right. Final answer.
Final answer. Let's go.
It just says toasty.
Okay,
as
yeah.
the answer.
So I we're gonna take that. I did specifically cite toasty, but yeah, no, that's what you've got in the corner there. So woo, 1 for 1.
Yeah. Well, here's another one. It's a Sonic question. It's a red one, so it's tough. What is the name of Dr. Eggman's grandfather in Sonic Adventure 2? I played the side-scrolling Sonics, but not so much the Sonic Adventures. Yeah. What is the name of Dr. Eggman's grandfather in Sonic Adventure?
I have no idea, so I'm going to say something absolutely ridiculous. Let's go Herman von Egbert.
I'm going to go Dr. Eggman, because technically Dr. Eggman's grandfather should have the same last name.
Yeah. And might he also be a doctor?
He might also. Let's see what the answer is. It's actually Gerald Robotnik.
Okay. Yeah. All right, that makes sense. Gerald. I would have never guessed Gerald, but...
Me neither.
All right, 1 for 2.
Last question. This is a Final Fantasy one. I'm leaning on you, Mac, today for help with these questions. What is the name of Wakka and Lulu's child in Final Fantasy? What is the name of Wakka and Lulu's child?
All right.
You're actually acting like you might know.
So, real talk here. Yeah, I kind of skipped Final Fantasy X about a quarter of the way in. I was like, nope.
Not for me.
Yeah, and I knew that, I know Wakka and Lulu. I would have never thought that those crazy kids would get together. I don't know. I'm going to say Gerald Robotnik.
Gerald Robotnik. Let's see what the answer is. It's Vidinia. Vidina, actually. Vidina.
Never in a million years.
Well, hey, that was one where I had no idea to any of the answers, but we still had fun. That's been Nerdflex.
Well, now we turn to a little bit of legalese.
Legalese.
I'm not a lawyer, but we do talk about things because the laws shape how we play and enjoy video games. Lom, it is fortuitous that we did things today rather than on the 2nd. Not just because I was out of town, but because it allows me to share some breaking legalese.
Ooh.
I mentioned back in episode 291 in the history segment of the episode about a title called The Crew. It was a driving game, and it is now officially dead. It was an online-only driving experience. Not that it was required, because while you could play the game online with friends, it had a single-player mode that was online only because of constantly online DRM checks. But the full game data was always present on your computer or your console, so, it's not like that was necessary. But back in mid-December, as a matter of fact, I think it was the day after we recorded and posted episode 291, and I talked about it and how much I liked it, Ubisoft announced they were shutting down the game on March 31st. So they were like, hey, nerds, you've got, 3 months, and then we're shutting you down. And just before Christmas, so like a couple weeks after that, a few modders discovered that there was actually an offline mode that had been built into the game originally, complete with a menu for offline mode, but that Ubisoft had hidden that in favor of their always online server requirement before they released the game. But, it still had the offline mode coded into the video game itself, but Ubisoft wasn't interested in doing that. Now, 1 month after Ubisoft announced that they were shutting down this game, The Crew, mid-January was when Ubisoft made its comment that you might remember, players should get used to not owning their games comment, that, some people were a little bit annoyed of, but objectively a very classy thing to do on the heels of taking a flagship title and making it unplayable for anyone, anywhere, forever, throughout all time. Now, if you've listened to this show before, you probably know that Lom and I are big proponents of how video games are art and deserve to be preserved. Even every so often, we're talking about how, how Mr. Nice Guy's got that collection that is expanding each and every time. And, we occasionally do legaleses on video game consumer rights. And we're not the only ones, and here's the breaking bit. There is this very passionate, hard-working game preservation advocate named Ross Scott, who spent about several months of time preparing to make this shutdown of The Crew a sort of line in the sand from a legal perspective. Not in the US, of course. Obviously, as we all know, here in the US, we click I agree and remove our rights to seek any legal remedy. And many of the legal challenges that we wind up talking about, that we bring up here in Legalese, get shot down because of that. So that's an issue here. But that isn't so much of a hurdle in other countries. And with that understanding, Ross has made a site, StopKillingGames.com, that compiles months of amateur, professional, paid, and volunteer research into the legal frameworks across multiple countries for exactly how you can work to stop video game companies from shutting stuff down and leaving you in the lurch. Basically, depending upon your country and its consumer rights protections, this winds up being a version of going to the site, clicking which country you're a part of, and then it gives you not just the where you go to make a complaint to your consumer rights, division in your country, but also like breaking it down with images and, okay, this is what they're asking for in this, that, and the other. And also how to make governmental petitions. Now, for those of us who are here in the US, we're used to petitions of being kind of a version of just screaming into the void. But in some countries, petitions can actually be made to the point that you make a governmental or a parliamentary petition, that when they pass a threshold, the government is mandated for that petition to be debated by the respective government agency, such as in Australia, France, Germany, and so on. And Ross did a whole YouTube video on giving a good breakdown that I encourage everybody to watch. It went up yesterday. It would have gone live the hour after we would have recorded. As well as that website, StopKillingGames.com, would have gone live an hour after we would have done our show yesterday. So it was a great thing, actually, in retrospect, that we had to delay. Even without going to watch that video, you can certainly go to StopKillingGames.com and take action and do what you can. In some countries, if you maybe happen to be in France or in Germany, as I know we have some German listeners, you can make specific requests of your consumer protection agency, and they can take action. I've already filed a report to the FTC, and while I'm kind of hopeful, historically the FTC hasn't been too on with things like this, but Lena Khan, the current head of the FTC, has proven to be kind of somebody who's willing to go to bat for the customer, even if she doesn't think the odds are that good. And while we can't specifically do much to preserve video games, maybe working all the legal attempts at the same time can actually fix something somewhere in there. This is an opportunity, maybe, for us to shape, not just by getting a lawyer, but by actually petitioning our governments and our consumer protection agencies. And while it's not a perfect solution, Ross has put insane amounts of time into making this as easy as humanly possible so that we kind of stand a chance of something happening. Because it's easy to just be like, oh, well, I guess we're never going to play that video game again. Doesn't really have to be that way.
It doesn't.
We believe in video games as art. So maybe, no, not maybe. I'm calling on you, fellow nerds. We gotta push. We gotta make this type of thing happen. And that's Legalese. Let's be a part of it.
Let's be a part of it. Love it. Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Video games don't have to die. And before we go, we have one last segment called What We've Been Watching and What We've Been Playing, where we talk about just that, the cool, nerdy stuff we've been into before episode 302. Mac, what have you been watching and playing over the past couple weeks?
So I've been playing Ultros, of course. I've also been playing a little bit of the Metroid Prime trilogy on the Wii.
Nice.
I'm getting through the first Metroid Prime game, and soon enough I'll be moving on to the second. As for watching, RoboCop, followed by Blade Runner, the 1980s movies. Yeah. Mostly because Mrs. the Mac said that they wanted to watch RoboCop, and I was just like, oh, okay. And then halfway through the show, they're like, so when does Harrison Ford show up? I was like, I beg your pardon? Harrison Ford. This is supposed to be like a dystopia with really good music. Harrison Ford's in it. I'm just like, did you mean Blade Runner? And so then we finished RoboCop and then watched Blade Runner. So now we've seen
Nice.
both.
Love it.
But
Love
anyway,
it.
what about you, man?
Oh man, so what have I been playing? So a lot of Helldivers 2. And then, with my analog pocket, I've been playing a lot of the retro games. So I did say I picked up Nemesis and Contra, and a few others. So I've been playing those. And Mac, I did pick up one game recently on sale on Steam, and that game is called Balatros. And it's a poker Metroidvania that is getting so much hype, overwhelmingly positive on Steam, and I have been having a blast with it. Who would have thought? I'm not really into card-based games usually, but I have really gotten into this game, and it's taken a hold, so it's good. As far as watching, lots of NCAA March Madness, and a few movies here and there. But, Mac, why don't you take us home, my friend?
All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming out to episode 302, for making it what it was, and thank you for listening to this after the fact. Y'all are the best listeners on podcast platform here, viewers on Twitch, listeners on everywhere. You're also fantastic people. You're great gamers, and we all love and care about this art form that has meant so much to us. We will be live coming to you next week, next Tuesday, as usual, at 7 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Central. Until we see you next time, though, remember to tune in at twitch.tv/2nerds in a pod, share it with your friends, shout it from the mountaintops, keep it nerdy, and be excellent to each other. And we'll see you then.
Deuces.
Bye.